stranger needed only to cross two utterly lifeless streets to find himself in Vigatta's central piazza. Facing the square were the Chiesa Madre, the Circolo dei Nobili, the three-story palazzo of Barone Uccello, the two-story house of the Marchese Peluso, 5 trading shops for sulfur, almonds, and fava beans, the Sicilian Bank of Credit and Discount, and the town hall. Between the church and the Circolo began the Corso, a narrow street like all the rest, though a bit less tortuous. Nor was there any sign of life in the piazza, except for a spotted dog blithely pissing at the foot of an odd statue without a pedestal next to the half-open door of the Nobles Club. Between pale brown and gray in color, and absurdly placed in a genuine wicker armchair, the monument represented a decrepit old man in a frock coat, holding a walking stick in his crossed arms. As the stranger resumed walking towards the Corso, the dog moved likewise, circling closely around the statue. Then it stopped and raised its hind leg again, aiming straight at the frock coat, which touched the ground. Halfway across the square, the stranger froze in bewilderment. He had the troubling feeling that a pair of eyes were staring hard at him, though he couldn't tell where that menacing gaze was coming from. He took a few more steps, unconvinced that continuing in the open was the right thing to do. At that same moment, with the sort of slowness he had sometimes experienced in nightmares, the statue raised its right arm and waved its fingers weakly at him, clearly inviting him to come closer. Feeling his shirt suddenly stick to the sweat streaming down his back, the stranger stopped in front of the old man and bent down to see a face that looked like baked clay sculpted by long exposure to sunlight and frost, in whose deep wrinkles fly shit and pigeon droppings had formed a rough sort of paste, and under lashes encrusted with sand and sulfur dust he discovered 2 knife-sharp, very living pupils. The old man contemplated the stranger for a few seconds in silence, began to shake all over, and opened his mouth as if to cry out in astonishment. "Madonna benedicta," he managed to rasp. Then he lowered his eyelids, repeating again to himself, this time almost in a tone of resignation, "Madonna benedicta." Polite and patient, with body bent forward, the stranger granted the old man all the time he needed to regain his breath and reopen his eyes. "You are—" the old man began. But just as he was about to utter the stranger's name and surname, his memory suddenly slipped away, let go the rope dredged up with such effort from that black well of leaden recollections, got lost in a labyrinth of births and deaths, forgot events like wars and earthquakes, and seized fast upon something that had happened to the old man when he was barely 4 years old, and his uncle's hunting dog had bitten him after he had poked it with a stick. "You're a hunting dog," the old man managed to conclude, shutting his eyelids tight, to let the other understand that he had no more intention to waste his breath. The stranger doffed his cap, bowed deeply to the man, who had turned back into a statue, and continued on his way. Though not a day went by when he didn't steal some trifle or other, Sasà Mangione, a stevedore and porter in his free time, could not really be called a thief, and such was the same conclusion reached by Police Inspector Portera after he had arrested Sasà some 15 times. A thief because he pinches things from others? The inspector had asked himself. If he had no money and made a little by selling what he stole, fine. But Sasà didn't need any money, since his wife was the maid of Commendatore Aguglia, a crazy ex-Garibaldian who said that all men are created almost equal, and therefore paid his maid 4 times the going rate. What's more, Sasà did not resell what he took from others. Hadn't the inspector found Don Saverio Piscopo's magnifying glass, Schoolmistress Pancucci's map of the world, and Dr. Smecca's microscope safe and sound in Sasà's home? And so, there could only be one explanation. Sasà stole purely for the pleasure of depriving people of things. Sasà was not a thief, but a thieving magpie.